Hi there, and welcome to the IBAC Tech Trek Podcast, where we explore the outer reaches of insurance technology. I'm joined today by Matt Welykholowa, the Chief Transformation Officer at Sandbox. Matt, how's it going?
Great. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Tom.
My pleasure. So, Matt, could you give our audience a brief background on both yourself and Sandbox?
I've actually just been with Sandbox. It'll be 11, well, it was 11 months yesterday, actually. So joined Sandbox after spending, it'll be 30 years next year in the financial services space. So I kind of grew up from kind of day one entry level positions in the credit union system in Saskatchewan. So I spent a lot of years in kind of in IT, and then kind of progressed my career through project management and program management. And then I had a stint for about 5 years where I got to partner with three credit unions to build a wealth management company. So that also included life insurance. So that was kind of, I guess, my first exposure into insurance. And then I went and spent a few more years with one of the partner credit unions that I had worked with there, leading their IT and data teams, which they were going through a massive merger as well. And so kind of got the merger approval over the line. And then this opportunity showed up for me, which was pretty amazing to join Sandbox. And it was from a previous colleague who's the CEO of Sandbox, Rob Jones. So I worked with him in the credit union space years and years ago, right? So just goes to show that relationships are very, very important. So I joined Sandbox, so Sandbox Mutual Insurance. So we serve from all the way from now from Ontario to BC. We're launching organically in BC with our broker partners on July 1st, which is very, very exciting. And then we just received our Ontario license this year. So we probably won't be going kind of organically into Ontario for a couple of years yet. So.
Okay. And just to be clear, Sandbox deals exclusively through the broker distribution channel, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we are 100% broker distribution.
Speaking of future, we're going to talk AI because that's what everybody talks about these days. And I think there's so many different aspects of the AI conversation one can have. I think one of the things we're going to talk about here is also change management, which it sounds like you've had quite a fair amount of experience in your background as as a project manager, as a program manager, as a CIO, and so on. But we're going to set the stage for that by just talking about today, in your opinion, Matt, what is possible with the publicly available tools like the Chat GPTs and Geminis and Claude and so on?
Well, this is like something that I've been trying to figure out because about 9 months, I think it was about a couple months into my journey at Sandbox, we had a town hall meeting, and one of our brave staff stood up and said, they asked the question. Everybody is kind of thinking, is AI going to take our jobs, right? And I'm a father of two boys, one 16 and one 13. They're going to be going to school here in a couple of years, like to university, and they're starting to ask now with this massive change around, like, what do they need to do for a career? Like, where should they be going and studying, right? And is AI going to take that job, I guess, in the future? And so it's something that I think from a change management perspective, I think, as leaders, we kind of owe it to our staff and our teams to try to lead through these massive changes in innovation for something, especially like AI, right? And it's super complex. And but you go back to kind of examples. I think we found a newspaper article from 1814, and it was from the advent of the printing press. And I'll read the one line. It's kind of hilarious. It says, "Little more remains for man to do than to attend upon and watch this unconscious agent in its operations." Right. It sounds pretty familiar from all the buzz in the media today around AI, right? And I think I've had to take a deep dive myself and try to understand kind of what this the impact of AI is going to be on our future. And so I went to a conference kind of back in March, and I've been playing around with the tools for the last few years, right, and just trying to learn it myself. But I went to this conference, and I think it had a pretty major impact, I guess, on my outlook, right, in terms of where this is potentially going. And at this conference, they kind of showed different new technologies like MCP servers, right, model context protocols, and how agents can now interact with those systems like through instructions, right, and then also how different tools like vibe coding tools, whether using Claude Code or Cursor or Lovable or whatever it is, you can potentially now go in and build some of these applications. And everyone's talking about the SaaS apocalypse, right? And all of that. And so really trying to understand that as, a small to medium sized insurer to try to figure out how are we going to kind of navigate this as a team and what are those different skill sets that we're going to need. So I started actually going out and, after this conference, I kind of, took it upon myself to try to really understand this. And I started using a couple different platforms. So I was using Claude to help build prompts to, inject them into Lovable. And you can only imagine when Lovable, the receipt showed up on my CEO, my expense sheet. Yeah, he had some questions, right? But I started going in and started playing with it, right? And I think just being curious. And I think that's a super important skill set that all of our teams are going to need in the future is just to be curious. And I started going and building some of these, just different platforms and vibe coding, albeit is very different from enterprise software development. And we chat about that in a little bit, but I was able to go in and send in a prompt and in about an hour build a framework of a policy admin system, right? Or I also, with one of my PMs, we just collaborated together and built a framework of a CRM system, right? An enterprise portfolio management system. And started just playing with all of these tools. And I was just amazed, in an hour's worth of effort, what it could actually produce. So, we can only imagine, I guess, if you actually paired that with subject matter experts and the right partners with the, right software development lifecycle skills and discipline, what they could actually potentially accomplish.
So you just raised what I think is a really interesting point because I've talked to a lot of people who have vibe coded various things. I know a few brokers who've done some very, very cool things from a reporting perspective and analysis perspective. I've seen brokers just essentially for shits and giggles, try to build their own BMS. Now, these are brokers who are very, very good at insurance and very good at relationships. And they have run into a few, let's call them issues, potential significant issues. As someone who is an IT expert who's seen the work that goes into building an actual production system, whether that's security or database architecture, everything outside of just the actual coding, what kind of issues you think comes up when somebody who is not an IT expert and may not have access to other IT experts, what kind of risks can they fall into without even knowing it?
That's a very good question. So one of the things that I think we're all trying to figure out is how will vibe coding be able to turn into enterprise grade software in the future, right? And I think that is the major piece that's missing right now, and things are moving so fast. And I mean, an AI right now is only going to be, as worse as it is today, right? It's getting better and better every day. And I think, when I look back, even what was available, what you could do 6 months to a year ago compared to what you can do now, I'm pretty confident that in the next 1 to 2 years, the governance around AI development is really going to mature, I guess, right? And I think it does need to mature to be able to start to develop some of these tools in-house, or you're starting to partner. If you don't have that expertise in-house, you don't have the skill sets, you don't have the discipline, there are many new firms and existing firms out there today that you can partner with to actually go and build the software. I think the power in this, though, and we just kind of proved it to ourselves this past week. And what we did is we hosted an innovation camp, and it was really in alignment with the change management piece that we were speaking about earlier, and how do we start to pair some of these subject matter experts with development experts. And so we hosted a one-day camp where we paired 21 sandboxers from across the organization, and we paired them with a developer and a UI UX developer from a partner at a company called Zoo that's based in Saskatoon that we do a lot of work with. And we split them into 3 teams, and we had a competition, right? And one day they had to go and they had to build a product, right? And build a product that would improve the experience of a policyholder. And that's kind of all we gave them in terms of a framework. And honestly, by the end of the day, they had to develop a pitch competition or a pitch, and they competed against each other in the 3 teams. And honestly, I was absolutely blown away. I mean, I expected them to be pretty good, but all 3 teams were absolutely amazing in what they developed. And in one day, they developed ideas that if we put, maybe a few more days or a few more weeks behind it, we could actually use the code that they actually developed. So I think in that the governance around it is becoming so important, though, that you have to have the right partners and the frameworks to be able to implement that, I guess, within those systems. So it's one thing to go and develop it, but to actually publish it and ensure that the security holes are all fixed up, and that that you're not exposing your data is so important, right? And then just vibe coding, I wouldn't have the confidence to do that, but I do believe that in the next 1 to 2 years, with the governance and everything that's going to come along with that and the maturity, it's going to be at a place where you potentially could actually build your own BMS system.
Wow, that's bold words. So, and when you say you, let's talk about who the you is. So, if we look across the country, there's something in the order of 2,000 brokerages, give or take, in the country. And loosely, there's a bunch of dozen to 20 brokerages that are very, very large. In fact, some of them larger than many insurance companies. You got a whole bunch in the sort of regional players in the middle, then even more smaller brokerages. Do you think that all of these brokerages could do this, or is there something about size that helps, or something about the nimbleness of being small that might help? Where do you think the sweet spot for brokerages building their own tools, whether it's with BMS or something else?
Yeah, and I kind of said they could go and build their BMS. That doesn't mean that they should, right? so so I think scale definitely matters, in terms of the size of brokerages, that might have the right skill sets with, in house. I don't know the makeup of those different brokers that are out there today in terms of like the skill sets they have on the development side of things. And that's where if you don't have that skill set in house, it's something that you might have to partner. I know internally at Sandbox, that's one of the things that we're really looking at in terms of like doing a workforce audit, right? And trying to understand what are those skill sets and teams, what are they going to need to look like in the next, 5 to 10 years? And it's something that, I think looking in the past, the skill set development used to be pretty slow. Like, it was a pretty clear path on where you had to go, and it was multiple years. And I just think that time frame now is just shortening so much.
Yeah, let me ask you a clarifying question here. So, I have a relatively good sense of how good most brokerages are at technology. And I would say the answer is not, generally speaking. Some of the bigger brokerages, right, they probably have a security team. They've got a lot of infrastructure teams because they want to make sure all their staff are up and running. But in terms of developing applications, typically not the forte. They would rely on their broker management system vendor. They would rely on the sort of the smaller insure tech players to bring in very specific things like telephony or something to do with customer interactions or what have you. But to develop themselves, not generally the forte there. Knowing that brokerages that typically don't have a core discipline in IT, in your opinion, is this something they should do themselves? Is this? I'll give you three options. Is this something they should do themselves? Should they look at it with a strong technology partner, or should they just not do it at all and just buy off the shelf applications?
I'd probably say somewhere in between there, right? Like I think partnering with the right technology partner is probably the way to go. And I say that coming from a small to medium sized insurer, right? Because we have to do the same thing. We don't have the technical skill sets in house today, and it's something that we're continuously looking at to help achieve our strategic goals. They need to partner with the right people to deliver on those solutions. And one example I can kind of think of, and I know it's something that we're paying very close attention to, is the CSIO gateway, like the API gateway application. And because I think between brokers and insurers, we all have the goal of being able to provide the most seamless experience to our policyholders. We want to reduce the friction, and the only way that we're going to be able to do that is to partner, I guess, together and make sure that the architecture of what we're trying to do is sound, right? And I think there's a lot of merit in the CSIO API gateway, but being able to execute on that, across different BMS vendors, across different insurers and insure platforms, it's difficult. And I think that's where AI might be able to help us, right? And so you look at the concept of the MCP server and the model context protocol, where we all have different systems, we all have different workflows. So trying to standardize a workflow between all of them is going to be pretty impossible to do, right? And that's where I think AI agents and MCP server integrations could potentially really help there. And I know that's something that we're starting to have conversations with CSIO on as well, right? So that we can try to help influence the direction and the success of this project. Because we spend a lot of time, effort, money today integrating with individual BMS systems, right? It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of our time and effort and energy to be able to test these systems. And there are new entrants into the market, right? And it's hard for us to continuously add on that, what in the future will become technical debt. By adding on some of these newer BMS systems, whereas if you had that kind of agentic MCP integration, it's going to make life a lot easier on both sides, right? And be able to enable some of these new entrants into the market to communicate with us at the end of the day.
I'm glad you brought that up because it is. I mean, I've referred to the API gateway as kind of plumbing or infrastructure, which is never sexy and cool, right? AI is super sexy, super cool. Elon Musk is out there building trillion-dollar companies that essentially are, AI in space companies. But at the end of the day, this infrastructure is incredibly important. Every tech vendor that I've seen in the last 10, 15 years is always looking for integrations, whether that's an integration with a BMS player, whether that's integration with a carrier or what have you, because the reality is that nobody can build everything for all brokers, right? In any industry, there's always a ton of players who specialize in this, that, and the other thing. And the power of those specialties is an order of magnitude bigger when they're integrated, with the core operating system, whether that's at the carrier end or the BMS or what have you. So all those specialty things can get brought together and bring the power together. And that only happens when the integration is easy and effective. And today, if you're Sandbox and you've got to integrate with 57 different tech vendors, well, you prioritize and you end up, you go with the main BMS players and maybe one of the bigger insure techs, but you're losing all this amazing stuff that all these smaller guys are doing, but they don't yet have the market share for it to be cost effective for you. So you don't do it. And so all these phenomenal ideas and phenomenal advancements get left by the wayside. With the gateway, that problem goes away.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an opportunity, and I came from the credit union side, right, in financial services, and a massive topic that is hitting the regulators is the whole concept of open banking, right? So if you look to the UK and what they're doing over there, it's kind of migrated from open banking to open finance to now open data, and I think at some point down the road that's going to hit the insurance world as well, right? And whether it's 10 years, 15 years, but like you said, the plumbing is the most important piece so that we can start a path towards there, and align towards there. And the sooner we can kind of all get on the same page, and agree to the path forward, the easier it's going to be in the future.
I want to come back to more of a change management question for you. So we've kind of danced around this topic a little bit, all these changes, and you mentioned your kids and some of the staff at Sandbox asking, what are the implications for my future? So what are the implications for the future, in your opinion, for the people, right? So if you focus on the staff at an insurance company or the staff at a brokerage, what do you see the implications for them?
Well, I think at the end of the day, and this is something I presented to my team last week, to the whole Sandbox team. And when you look at the history that we've kind of all gone through, and the changes that we've been through, so whether it's been from the printing press to the typewriter to computers to the internet, right, and how that changed things, and then now to AI. At the end of the day, we're people protecting people, right? That's what insurance is, if you boil it down, right? And whether the tool sets that kind of layer on to the people helping people, whether it's the typewriter or the computer or the internet or now AI, at the end of the day, is it's just another tool that we need to learn and incorporate, into our daily lives. So from the change side of it, kind of going back, I think it's the duty, I see the duty from the leadership perspective to help our teams navigate that, right? And really start to invest in their career development, right? Their skill set development. And as I said, we're kind of going through a workforce planning project to help try to figure that piece of it out, and what are the skills that they're going to kind of need to advance their careers. Because I mean, the reality is, in the next 5 years, data entry positions will likely, like, they will change, right? Because a lot of the capabilities around AI agents and being able to, whether it's submission ingestion of applications, a lot of that manual data entry has the potential to go away with some of the new tools that are coming. But as we scale as a company, we're still going to need the people, right? But I'm a firm believer that everybody owns their own career, right? But I also, view myself as, one of my core responsibilities as a leader is to help my team and my people get to where they want to be, right, within their career, whether it's at Sandbox or not, right? It's they own their own careers and development, I see a massive, opportunity, I think, for a lot of people to get into roles that are really providing, I would say, more, value, I guess, at the end of the day.
So what I took away from that is that leaders need to step up. All right. So that there's one piece of feedback from you to the audience here is that leaders need to step up, chart a path, and bring their teams along with them. If I look at there's some data out there that suggests that in the Canadian market, about 10 to 15% of brokers have really done something, whether that's started or following the path of AI implementations of some sort, which leaves 85 to 90% of other brokerages not started. So where do you think these brokers, these 85 to 90%, should start? If you had to do, what is the first step on the path? Because I think in a lot of cases, these 85 to 90% of brokerages just don't know where to start, right? They haven't, the leadership hasn't done a deep dive into AI. They haven't done their own personal learning. They look at it as scary, or they look at it and say, well, we're a boutique shop. AI is never going to touch our business, which I don't think is the case. But if you had to say something to that 85 or 90% of brokerages who haven't started yet, what's the starting point? What's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
I think change management is definitely a personal journey, and there's going to be different leaders across the different brokerages that are at different stages, I guess, of the AI change journey, right? And so the one piece of advice that I would really give is just to lean in, right, and to just start to try to understand it yourself, like play around with it yourself, download Claude and let it kind of be, maybe it's your health coach or your retirement planning coach or whatever that might be, kind of in your personal, in your personal daily lives, right? And just try to understand it yourself, right? And there's a few good books out there. I mean, one good book I would definitely recommend would be Reid Hoffman, from the founder of LinkedIn. So he has a new book called Super Agency out there. That is a fantastic book. It does also go through the history and of kind of massive innovation and changes like this. So I think it really starts, and change management starts with yourself and your personal journey, right? So I think as leaders, you kind of have to really look at that piece of it and understand some of the different skill sets you're going to kind of need to also build, right? And that'll only just help the organization to grow and mature, kind of on its kind of AI literacy path. And then from, some of the base things I know that we're doing, we launched Microsoft Copilot, like many organizations, kind of, we started across kind of our leadership teams first. Then we kind of we're starting to add in some of the other positions now. So they've all had kind of just the general Copilot chat to this point. But then now we're starting to roll out the full licenses, just so that they can really start to take a deep dive and start to, be a lot more creative.
The world of insurance is changing because the world of tech is changing. Join us on the journey at ibactech.ca.